Hello, everyone. It looks like we still have a couple of people coming in from the waiting room, but I'm going to go ahead and get started with how to create and use Canvas rubrics. Oops. I am Ed McGee. I'm an instructional designer, and I work at Central Virginia Community College. Joining us today, we have our chat facilitators, Terry Milroy from Southside, Forrest Smith from Germanna, Aaron Leftwich from Virginia Western, Melissa Stiltner from Southwest, and Paige Durham from Germanna. We also have several other people who are on the ELED committee or work for the system office online. One thing I do want to mention, we are going to have assignments in this webinar. So if you've been doing these webinars, you know that we take breaks for assignments. So one thing you might want to do if you only have a single screen is to go ahead and escape. So that way, click escape, so that way you can go out of full screen mode, and that way you can switch back and forth between Canvas and the Zoom meeting. The second thing I want to go ahead and have you ready to do is for the assignments in this webinar, be ready to have an assignment that you can just put in a fake module in your sandbox, or if you have an assignment somewhere else that you don't mind editing on the fly, you can use that as well. So today, we're going to talk about why you would use Canvas rubrics, okay? And also how to create an assignment with a simple rubric. We're going to view the assignment in student view and submit an assignment as a test student. That'll give you a good idea of what it's like to be a student. And we're also going to use the rubric to grade the assignment in SpeedGrader. That's probably one of the big advantages to using rubrics in Canvas. And then we're going to manage and edit rubrics in Canvas. And finally, I'll finish up with how to add rubrics to discussion boards. So why use Canvas rubrics? First, they provide students with clear expectations. If you've used rubrics in the past, you probably understand why that is so important for students. Secondly, quick, objective, efficient for grading. In particular, once we get into SpeedGrader, you'll see how much faster and better it is to grade using a rubric. The other thing I love about Canvas is students will see the rubric attached to the assignment before they submit. So that way it's the first thing, one of the first things they see when they see the assignment and begin it, but it's also one of the last things they see before they actually click submit. And finally, really important, rubrics will provide students with detailed feedback about their grades. All right, so the first thing we're gonna do is go over how to create a rubric in Canvas. Now, when you create a rubric, again, I mentioned earlier, once you attach it to the assignment, students will see it both when they open the assignment and when they get ready to submit. And they'll have that clear set of expectations. And another thing we're going to mention, just going back in this series a little bit, we're going to reinforce those learning objectives. So we can actually put our learning objectives in the rubric. And another thing that I've added to this is rubrics can be used for low stakes assignments as well as high stakes assignments. And I'm going to go ahead and make a confession to you right now. Up until this spring, I was guilty of only using rubrics for formal assignments, research papers, projects, things like that. In the spring, this semester, I started using rubrics in all of my low stakes assignments. I have a course that requires students to do several small writing assignments. And I will tell you, I believe, better work from my students. I think they took it more seriously. And also, I mentioned it's a time saver. If you do your rubric once, I noticed, I don't know that I got less questions from my students, but I got more directed questions. They were more specific. So that way, I didn't have to spend time with a student saying, oh, I don't understand, explain. They would ask very specific questions about what I wanted. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at the Canvas course, and we're going to create a rubric now. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my sandbox. Everybody should be seeing my sandbox now. And I've already created a rubrics module, okay? And within this module, I've already created a simple assignment. And notice I called it simple assignment for a reason, because it's very simple. All right, so I'm going to click on it. And this is kind of similar to an assignment that I give in one of my classes. Obviously, it's really stripped down. It's called fact-based opinion. And I went ahead and put my learning objectives in this assignment. You probably wouldn't just stack 3 learning objectives on top of the instructions, but I'm just doing this as a demonstration. And students, to complete the assignment, I want them to use a reliable source to find a fact and state the fact in the source. Use that fact to state an opinion, and then justify the opinion with a fact that you found. Okay. Next thing I want to do, I'm just as a little review, if you're having to create an assignment, I'm going to go ahead and go into edit. Now we're not doing rubrics yet. I'm going to go ahead and assign points to this. This is what I'm going to want you to do for your assignment later. And I'm going to change my submission to online. And I want text entry. I want to at least have text entry. And I'm going to come in and save. Okay. Now, one of the things that I get questions from faculty on a lot, they go into edit and look for rubrics. But the fact is, once you have your assignment, you're going to add your rubric directly from the bottom. You don't have to go into edit. While we're at it, I'm also going to point out, if you notice over in the navigation bar, there is a link for rubrics. That's where you would go to manage. Now, you could create a rubric there. If you're asking yourself, hey, how come that's been there? How could that be there and I've never seen it? It's because it was added fairly recently. There used to be a different way you'd have to get there, and this is much easier. But we're going to get to that later. So right now, we're just going to create a rubric for this assignment. So I'm just going to click the plus rubric. All right. And I'm just going to go ahead and go left or right to left and down as we go. You may do this in a different order if you'd like. Now, if I already had a rubric saved somewhere, I could just go find that rubric and add it. And we're going to do that later. But right now, we're just going to make one from scratch. So I'm going to call this fact-based opinion. Okay. And I've named it. Now, what we have at the top here, we have different criteria. Ratings, that's how we're going to grade the student. And the number of points the criteria is worth. When you're editing within the rubric, you'll notice the little pencil. That's how you edit a section. And a little trash can, that's how you delete it. So I'm going to go ahead and add a criteria. All right. In my criteria, I'm just going to say identifies credible source and fact. All right. I could give more of a description here if I wanted to. I'm not going to for the sake of time. So we have that. Okay, over here on ratings, notice we have 2 boxes. So I'm going to edit the first. All right. And I'm just going to leave that at 5 points right now. So I can change this title. I prefer credit. Okay. To marks, but you could leave marks or you can name this anything you want to. Now we'll go into my rating description. My rating description is what I'm going to tell the student what full credit looks like. So in this case, full credit looks like, I'm just going to say source meets credibility definition. Stated. Please don't judge me on my typing. All right. And that's what, when I click update, that's what my full credit's going to look like. All right. My 0 credit right now, I'm going to go ahead and edit that. I'm going to click the little pencil. My 0 credit, I'm just going to say Again, change that to credit, because that's what I like. My full credit, my rating description, I'm just going to say no source. Again, of course, I'd be a lot more diligent in how, if I'm writing, if I were actually presenting this to students, but we're trying to get through a lot in one day. All right, so over here on the side where it says 5 points, this one criteria is worth 5 points, okay? I would rather this be worth 30 points, so I'm gonna change the whole thing to 30 points. And when I change it, notice my full credit changed to 30 points. If I were editing here and change my points in the full credit section, this would change as my total as well. All right, now there's a point in the middle of this, isn't there, that we might want to grade students on. So I'm going to click this plus button right in the middle, and it's going to create another box for me that's worth 15 points. I could change that, but I'm just going to put that right in the middle. I'm going to call it partial credit. Okay, in my description, I'm just going to say source not reliable. All right, so when my student sees this, they know that for full credit, they need to have a reliable source that meets the definition that I'm sure we've gone over already. For partial credit, somewhere in here, it's going to mean that they didn't do that. They gave a source, but doesn't meet the definition. If they don't give a source, they get nothing. All right, so let's add another criteria. So I'm going to click here to add a criteria. I could duplicate that if it's something I wanted to edit or change, but I'm just going to add a new one. All right, the description is, I'm just going to call it opinion stated. All right. And you know what? In this case, I'm just asking them to create an opinion. And I'm going to want this to be worth 20 points. All right, so I'm going to edit it here. And I'm going to get to why I'm just leaving this as a yes or no. They either get 20 or they don't in just a second. So now I'm going to add another criteria. If you go back up to my objectives, I want students to justify an opinion with a fact, okay? And you know, if you're looking at this assignment, you know, that's really what I'm looking for at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and click the edit button. Oops, sorry, got away. I'm going to add a criterion, got ahead of myself. Click new. Okay. Okay, and now this is where I can really get into making sure my students know what I'm looking for, particularly as it goes to my directions and my objectives. I'm going to go ahead and click the pencil, okay? We're going to call this, instead of full credit, I'm going to call this excellent. And just in the description, we're going to keep it short. Student gives justification. Obviously, I would give a better description, but that's all we need for now. Oh yeah, while I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and edit this and turn this to 50 points, just so you see. When I change my top score to 50, I'm going to update the rating, and there it is. All right, now I may also go ahead and put in another one. We're going to change this to a range. We're going to make this 40. Remember I said I can change this. So we're going to do a range that's probably, you know, under an 80. All right, and we're going to just call this fair. And say student doesn't explain thoroughly. All right, as I mentioned before, we're going to make this a range. So right here, I'm going to click range beside the criteria. And now I have a range of 50 to 40 points for excellent. So that's in your A and B range. And then my 40 to 0 in the fair, it's probably not a great description, but we're going to say less than excellent. And of course, 0 would be if the student didn't do anything. Totals up to 100 points. Now, for my options of how I might want to do with what I might want to do with my rubric, I would not have gone in and put all these points in if I would have chosen to write freeform comments. But if you wanted to create a rubric that has everything blank, you can just click that and then put all your comments in that way. You can remove the points from the rubric. Again, I wouldn't have done that had I wouldn't have put all the points in if I was going to remove it. We're not worried about outcomes today. That's for another day. And finally, use this rubric for assignment grading and hide the score total. If I use this rubric for assignment grading, which is kind of what I recommend, that means whatever grades I put into this rubric, that's going to automatically go into the grade in SpeedGrader. So it saves you a click. It's nice to do. Why you would want to hide the rubric from students, I don't know, but I'm sure somebody has a reason. And then I'm going to click Create Rubric. So now I have a rubric. It's attached to this assignment. All right, so here in just a second, I'm going to get you to go ahead and make yourself a rubric. So as I share, just to remind you, when you create a rubric, at the bottom of the assignment, you're going to see the plus rubric button, and that's not in the edit mode. That's just attached to the assignment. Remember to title your rubric, edit your ratings. Remember, all of your editing goes by, you edit by touching the pencil, clicking the pencil. You can edit your points. And I would like you to add criterion. Get at least one group of criterion in. And I'm going to give you a full 5 minutes. So that should give you plenty of time to play around. So if you're already on your way, feel free to add as many criterion as you want and play around. And notice at the end, be sure to click Create Rubric, and then you'll be ready. So this is your assignment. Create a simple assignment if you haven't already. Use the rubric tool to create a simple rubric. And once you've done that, again, feel free to add. Okay, we've got just about 1 minute left. So as I said, make sure you have at least one criteria in your rubric. If you've been playing around a lot, be sure to go ahead and finish up. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and submit an assignment in Student View. If you take any bonus training from this session, I can't stress enough how important it is, or how handy it is to use the Student View to check your work, because it'll, for one thing, it'll just make it easier for you to find your mistakes. Second thing is you get an idea of how your students see your assignments and your Canvas elements. All right, so we're going to go ahead and go back over to a Canvas course. And I'm right back where I was at in my sandbox. Notice we have our assignment with our rubric attached. Now to go into Student View, I'm going to click Home. And over here to the right, you'll see Student View in this navigation. All right, so I'm going to click Student View. And now this is how my students see it. So if I'm a student, I'm going to go into Assignment. And I see this assignment as a student. I see what the instructor wants me to do. I'm test student right now, by the way. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I think I'm ready for this. I'm going to submit my assignment. And it's a text entry. All right, so I'm going to use my instructor said I need to use a reliable source. So I remember talking about this. So I'm going to use the Virginia DMV. And I know I'm supposed to add a fact to this. And one fact I found out is that over 400,000 people were injured in distracted driving crashes last year. All right, so as a student, I'm feeling pretty good about myself. I found my source. I know that's not a normal source. I've added my fact, feeling good about that. But here's my rubric. All right, so before I even submit, maybe I'm going to take a look at this and say, oh yeah, I was supposed to state an opinion and justify it with a fact. I didn't finish. So that's what we're really hoping students will do before they actually come down and submit the assignment. So my opinion is people shouldn't text and drive. All right, so as test student, I'm feeling pretty good about this. I'm going to go ahead and submit this assignment. Okay, and I get the celebration that I submitted my assignment. Okay, so now I want you to do the same thing. Now remember, to get into Student View, you're going to go to your home page and select Student View on the right. Go ahead and do your assignment. Again, you don't have to put much in there. It's just a placeholder, basically. And I'd like you to take a second and just reflect. Does adding the grading criteria to the rubric make sense to the students at this point? Be sure to submit the assignment. Best way to do it is to use the text box. And then when you're done, leave the student view by clicking the button on the bottom of your screen. There's a little button. It's I don't know if that's hot pink or not sure if that's purple, but the very bright colored bar at the bottom of the screen, you'll see a button that says Leave Student View. So do that after you submit. Now, we're not going to use the full 3 minutes for this. Probably only going to go ahead and give you 2 minutes. So at the 1 minute mark, we're gonna get on out of here. Again, you don't have to do much. Okay, if you haven't already, go ahead and finish up. Just submit whatever you have. And we're going to move on to using the rubric to grade in SpeedGrader. And this is one of the more exciting things for once you get your rubrics set up and you get used to using them, you're going to really appreciate how well this works in SpeedGrader. Now, some advantages to using rubrics with SpeedGrader. Again, the students will see the rubric and their score and their scores of that rubric along with their grades. So that way they know why they received the grades they did. They'll see the areas that they need to improve on immediately. And of course, they'll also get immediate reinforcement of things they did correctly. I know a lot of times that's where we fall short, is not giving good feedback to students who have done things well. Also, as an instructor, you have a very clear and consistent grading criteria. Even in areas where you don't, you can also justify your subjective grading. And finally, it's a time saver. Again, once you get your rubric set up, you can move through grading faster than you did without. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at SpeedGrader. And just a reminder, if you didn't already, be sure to leave student view. And here's my assignment. I'm back in instructor view. I'm going to click SpeedGrader. And notice here's the test student, that's me. And here's my assignment that I turned in. And I have the choice I can view my rubric. So I'll just click the button and view my rubric. Now it's going to hang way off the screen. So what you want to do is grab this little bar, move it over, as far as you need to. Now, one of the cool things about grading, and this is what I love, is now with my criteria, identifies credible source and fact. I like the source, I like the fact. I can just click on it, give them full credit. Opinion stated, well, hey, that's an opinion. I can click on it and give it full credit. Now, when I see justify the opinion with a fact, this really isn't excellent as an instructor. So what I can do is come in and say, didn't really give me much detail, didn't really give me cause and effect. I'm going to make this a 38. And you notice that the rubric lights up and tells me that this is in the fair zone, not the excellent zone. And then if I click save, it'll update my grade. So one thing I want to mention that when I said this can help you justify your subjective grading, what if this student took this fact from the DMV and the test student said, people should practice texting so that they can do it better when they're driving? Yeah, that would be an opinion. So I could say, yeah, you did state an opinion. But when we get down to justify that opinion with fact, as we should have covered, you can't just cherry pick a fact out of the DMV website and assume that's what the DMV wants you to know. You really did not justify your opinion. So yes, you followed directions, test student, but you really didn't do the assignment as far as justifying your opinion with an actual fact. So that way, if a student comes back to you and says, hey, I did exactly what you said to do, can't blame me for my opinion, I can come back and say, yeah, you really didn't follow the instructions for justifying. All right, so this student using this looks like got an 88. I'm gonna click save. Automatically upgrades the grade here. I could click here and move on to my next student. Down here, I can also add comments, which I would probably want to add a comment concerning this fair grade here. And when I add comments, I can click submit and the student will get the comment. I want to mention that next week, there's two really good webinars that hopefully most of you will be attending, and one of them involves student feedback. So I'm sure that's going to be really good for commenting on assignments and things like that. All right, so my student has been graded. And again, I want to point out just how easy this is. Oh, I forgot. I promised you I'd make one more confession. I have been teaching online since 1999, and during that time, there have been times when I have graded and not left an adequate amount of feedback. It's true. Just out of time, for whatever reason. I'm sure one or two of you feel the same way every now and then. But if you have your rubric set up, particularly if you're doing these low stakes assignments where a lot of it is just checking to make sure the student did what they were supposed to do, you know, a typical homework type assignment, when you have the rubric here and you can just click through, and instead of just putting a grade and typing in good job, now all of a sudden students see what you actually graded. So that's a really nice way to leave at least adequate feedback to an assignment if you have a rubric set up. It's okay, you can judge me on that. Okay, so let's get on back to screen. And for your activity, what I'm going to want you to do is go to instructor view, make sure you're in instructor view, open the assignment in SpeedGrader, that's up in the upper right-hand corner of your assignment, and then use your rubric to score the test student assignment. You should have a test student assignment that you did. Again, at the bottom, be sure to leave feedback and submit. If you did your rubric the way I did, where we're using the rubric to grade, then it will submit the grade automatically, but you'll still need to click submit in order to submit any additional comments. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes to do that. Okay, you should be winding down now. And as you're grading, just take a second and think about when you have 30 or more students in your class and you roll through that. Um, you maybe get a little brain fatigue, and then you have all of those criteria right in front of you. You can point and click, and then leave good feedback for your students. All right, the next thing we're going to do is managing rubrics. So I'm going to click that. We're going to go back to our Canvas course. Okay, I am still in SpeedGrader. So if you're still in SpeedGrader, all you have to do is close it. It's its own window. We're back to the assignment, but that's not what we're going to do right now. Remember I told you about this cool little rubrics link over on the left? It's very handy, a lot easier to get to now. We're going to click on that. And notice you see my rubrics for this course. One that I just created just in case I needed to get to it in a hurry for this assignment or for this webinar. This is the one I just created. And this is one that we're going to use in just a minute. So if I wanted to create a rubric from the rubrics area, all I would just click add rubric, and it's the exact same thing. If I wanted to delete a rubric, I would just choose this one. I would just open it, and it gives me the option to delete. Now, why would you want to create a rubric in this area? It depends. It's strictly up to you and your taste. The way my brain works, I like to put my rubrics, just attach my rubrics directly to the assignment that they belong with. But I would say probably most people aren't as absent-minded as I am, so that works for me. If it works better for you to manage them in one place, then by all means do it that way. One thing I created over here was a facts discussion rubric, and we're going to use that in just a minute. And again, since I created this already, I can, I don't think I'm, okay, good. I can edit this rubric from here. So if I wanted to change this discussion board to be worth 30 points, I could, and update it. And now I've changed it. Okay, and I'm just going to go ahead and go straight to a discussion board rather than going back to the slideshow for now. All right, so you see that I created a simple discussion. So I'm going to click that. Now, if I want to add a rubric to a discussion board, that's just a little bit different. All right, first thing I need to do is click Edit. And this has to be graded. Looks like I left it as graded. All right. Points possible of going by my rubric, it's worth 30 points. And save it. So now that I have a graded discussion, I can go up here to the kebab and add a rubric. So that's a little bit different than the assignment. Now, remember when I said if you had a rubric saved in the section where we were managing rubrics, you could go find it rather than create a new one. We're going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to click Find a Rubric. And you're actually going to go find your course. Again, I'm an instructional designer, so I have a lot of courses. And this is my course. You see my 3 rubrics. I'm going to choose the facts discussion, and then just click Use this rubric. All right, notice it opens up in its own window. All right, it's not actually attached. That's just because I think it would be bulky if they just attached it to a discussion. So you can just close out of it. If you want to see it again, you click the kebab. Yeah, if I click it, it'll just bring it right back up. If I click add rubric. If I leave here and come back, it'll say show rubric. Now, I mentioned that also because your students will have to do the same thing. So if you're going to attach a rubric to a discussion board, be sure to let your students know that they have to click that kebab, the 3 little dots, to see the rubric. Okay. Okay, and I already went through this, but again, just want to point this out. After the discussion, you click the 3 dots, the kebab, to add the rubric. Okay, for our wrap up in this webinar, we created a rubric with an assignment. We added objectives to a rubric. We viewed a rubric in student view, and we used a rubric to grade in SpeedGrader, and we managed existing rubrics and added a rubric to a discussion. Within this webinar series, notice between developing meaningful assessments, we have activities that support objectives, content building modules, again, LMS practices, coming straight up the line, creating using rubrics, which draws directly from assessments and objectives. Of course, these 2 things matter as well. And then next week, you're going to do quizzes and assessments and providing substantial feedback in gradebook. I think the feedback will also build on the rubrics a little bit, so everything's nice and aligned. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Please take this survey. I think somebody will pop it into the chat box for you. Let us know how we did. And there's an attendance poll, if you can take that as well, if you're looking for credit. You see, did you find the webinar useful? Hopefully you all did. And again, want to thank you for joining us. You can check out all our recordings and slide decks at the EdTech webpage. So be sure to check that out. We have these from this series and then many more from previous series. And you can find this recording probably in the next few days. Everybody have a nice day. Thanks for joining us.